I, 28M, found myself in a really messed up situation with my family, especially my brother Mike, 32M. This is a long story, but I need to share all the details to explain how things got so bad between us. Mike and I grew up in a middle-class family in Boston. Despite the 4-year age gap, we were really close as kids. Our mom passed away from cancer when I was 16 and Mike was 20. It hit us both hard, but Mike really stepped up as the big brother. He was in college at the time but came home every weekend to help out. Dad struggled with losing mom but tried his best to keep things normal for us. 2 years after mom died, Dad met Janet, 55F, at a work conference. She was divorced with no kids and worked in the same industry as Dad. They dated for 6 months before getting married. Janet was nice enough at first, but it became clear pretty quickly that she favored Mike. I tried not to let it bother me since I was already 18 when she came into our lives, but it still hurt sometimes. Growing up, Mike was always the golden child of the family. He got straight A's throughout school, was captain of the football team, and got a full athletic scholarship to an Ivy League college. Everyone in our family talked about how successful he'd be. I wasn't a bad kid, just average. I got B's and C's, played JV basketball but wasn't a star, and went to state college on student loans. Dad never directly compared us, but I could tell he was prouder of Mike's achievements. After college, Mike went straight into working for Dad's construction company. Within 5 years, he'd worked his way up to VP of operations. Meanwhile, I got an okay job in marketing at a local firm. The pay was decent but nothing spectacular. Mike bought a big house in the suburbs with his wife Sarah, 30F, while I rented a 1-bedroom apartment in the city. Our grandmother, Dad's mom, lived about an hour away in this beautiful old Victorian house. She was pretty well off from my grandfather's life insurance and smart investments. Mike and I both spent a lot of time at her house growing up. She taught me how to garden and cook, while she and Mike would spend hours talking about business and investments. I always thought she was closer to Mike because they had more in common. Last year, Grandma passed away after a short battle with pneumonia. The whole family gathered for the reading of her will. I expected Mike to inherit the house since he had a family and made better money. Everyone seemed to think that's how it would go. But when the lawyer read the will, I was shocked to learn she'd left me the house and a significant amount of money, around $400,000 in total. Mike only got some family heirlooms, antique furniture, photo albums, and Grandpa's old watch collection. The look on his face when the lawyer announced everything is something I'll never forget. He tried to play it cool, but I could tell he was angry and hurt. Janet immediately started questioning if Grandma had been in her right mind when she wrote the will, but the lawyer confirmed everything was legally sound. I decided to rent out Grandma's house since I liked my apartment and it was closer to work. The rental income helped me save up and live more comfortably. I also started fixing up parts of the house on weekends, using skills Grandma had taught me. Mike never directly brought up the inheritance again, but things got weird between us. He stopped inviting me to family gatherings at his place. When I tried to arrange hangouts, he always had excuses. Work was busy, the kids were sick, he had plans with Sarah's family. At Dad and Janet's house, he'd barely acknowledge me. I figured he just needed time to process everything. 3 months ago, my apartment building got taken over by new management. Within weeks, they claimed they'd received multiple noise complaints about me. This made no sense. I live alone, work long hours, and rarely even have friends over. My neighbors never had issues with me before. Then they said someone reported me for having an unauthorized pet. I don't even have a pet, I'm allergic to cats and don't have time for a dog. When I pointed this out, they claimed they'd gotten photos showing a cat in my window. I asked to see these photos, but they always had excuses for why they couldn't show them. Finally, they hit me with a series of lease violations, unauthorized modifications to the apartment. I hadn't changed anything, excessive guests, I barely have visitors, and noise violations during quiet hours. I'm usually asleep by 10. Despite providing evidence that none of this was true, they informed me they wouldn't be renewing my lease when it ended in 30 days. I was forced to move into a crappy monthly rental while looking for something permanent. The whole situation seemed suspicious, so I started asking around. My next door neighbor mentioned she'd seen Mike talking to the building manager multiple times in the weeks before the complaint started. When I asked why my brother would be there, she said they seemed to be having intense conversations in the manager's office. I confronted Mike about it, but he completely denied everything. He claimed he'd only been in the building once to drop off a birthday card, which I never received. Something felt off about his story, but I had no proof. Last week was Dad and Janet's 15th anniversary dinner. The whole family gathered at their house, including Mike and Sarah. Everyone was talking about my apartment situation and Mike was acting all concerned, asking if I'd found a new place yet, offering suggestions for areas to look. Something in me snapped. I revealed right there that I knew he'd been talking to my building manager. I had gotten security camera footage from the building showing him entering the management office at least 5 times over 2 weeks. Then I told everyone how he'd been jealous about Grandma's inheritance and was trying to force me to sell the house by making me homeless. Mike completely lost it. His face went red and he started yelling. He admitted everything, how he'd convinced the manager I was a problem tenant by bribing him, How he thought it was unfair grandma left me the house when he had a family to support. How he assumed I'd have to sell the house to afford a new place to live in this market. He said I didn't deserve the inheritance because I'd never been as successful as him. Dad was furious. Janet tried defending Mike, saying he was just upset about being overlooked by grandma, but Dad shut her down hard. He said what Mike did was unforgivable. Mike and Sarah stormed out of the dinner, with Janet following them. The rest of the dinner was ruined. Dad apologized to me later and said he had no idea Mike would do something like this. He's barely speaking to Mike now. The rest of the family is divided. Some think I should have handled it privately, others say Mike deserved to be exposed publicly for trying to make his own brother homeless. I moved into grandma's house temporarily while looking for a new apartment. Mike keeps trying to call and text to apologize, but I'm not ready to forgive him. He actively tried to make me homeless out of spite and jealousy. If he hadn't been caught, he would have kept going until he forced me to sell. Ida for exposing him at dinner instead of dealing with it privately? Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since the dinner incident, and everything has gotten so much worse than I could have imagined. A lot of shocking things have come to light that make this whole situation even more complicated. The day after I posted, Mike's wife Sarah reached out to me. She asked to meet somewhere private where we wouldn't run into any family members, so we met at a small coffee shop on the other side of town. What she told me over the next 2 hours made me realize this situation goes way deeper than just jealousy over grandma's inheritance. According to Sarah, Mike started acting strange about 6 months before grandma died. He was staying late at work, being secretive with his phone, and getting really defensive about their finances. Sarah initially thought he was having an affair, but the truth was much worse. Mike had taken out massive loans against his share of Dad's business to invest in cryptocurrency. Sarah showed me all the documentation on her phone. Without telling anyone, Mike had leveraged his 30% stake in the company to borrow over $200,000 from 3 different lenders. He was convinced crypto was going to make him a millionaire. He kept telling Sarah they were about to be rich. Then the crypto market crashed last year and he lost almost everything. Mike didn't tell anyone about the losses, not even Sarah. She only found out when bill collectors started calling their house looking for him. They're drowning in debt now. Their credit cards are maxed out, they've taken second and third mortgages on their house, and they're behind on their car payments. Sarah showed me their bank statements, they're barely staying afloat. This is where things get even more twisted. Mike had apparently convinced himself that since I got grandma's inheritance, he deserved to inherit Dad's entire business to make things fair. He thought if he could force me to sell grandma's house, I'd have no choice but to move away for work since I wouldn't be able to afford living in this area anymore. Then he'd have Dad's full attention and eventually talk him into signing over the whole company. Sarah found emails between Mike and the building manager where they planned the whole thing. Mike paid the guy $5,000 to fabricate complaints and force me out. He was planning to do the same thing wherever I moved next until I had no choice but to leave town. The building manager even suggested ways to make the harassment seem legitimate so I couldn't fight it legally. What makes this even worse is that Mike has been embezzling from Dad's company to cover his loan payments. Sarah found spreadsheets where he's been cooking the books, moving money between accounts to hide the missing funds. Dad has no idea his company's finances have been compromised. Mike somehow managed to hide it during their last audit. Sarah is filing for divorce. She said this whole situation opened her eyes to who Mike really is. She can't trust him anymore after discovering the massive debt and seeing how he tried to sabotage his own brother. She's been quietly moving whatever money is left into separate accounts and meeting with divorce lawyers. She's terrified Mike will empty their accounts if he finds out she's leaving. She begged me not to tell Dad about the loans and embezzlement yet. She's worried Mike might do something really desperate if everything falls apart at once. She needs time to get her and the kids somewhere safe first. I feel sick keeping this from Dad, but I understand her concerns. Mike's been acting increasingly erratic. The family is still completely divided over the dinner incident. Janet has barely spoken to Dad since that night because he's taking my side. She moved into their guest room and they've been fighting constantly. My aunts and uncles are choosing sides. Mom's family is supporting me while most of Dad's siblings are defending Mike. Some of my cousins reached out to reveal that Mike had been trying to turn them against me for months. He told them I had manipulated Grandma while she was sick, convincing her to change her will in my favor. He claimed I had prevented him from visiting her in her final weeks. None of that was true. Mike was too busy with his crypto obsession to visit Grandma much near the end. I'm still staying in Grandma's house for now. The tenant's lease was up anyway, and it feels right being here. Yesterday I found a box of old photos in the attic, pictures of Mike and me as kids playing in the backyard, building snowmen, opening Christmas presents together. We were so close once. He was my hero growing up. I used to tell everyone my big brother was the smartest, coolest person I knew. I keep asking myself if I could have seen this coming. Were there signs that money and status meant this much to him? Should I have noticed something was wrong when he stopped wanting to spend time with me? Part of me feels guilty for not realizing my brother was in so much trouble, even though he was actively trying to hurt me. Sarah calls every day with updates. Mike's getting more paranoid, convinced someone at work is going to expose his financial schemes. He's drinking heavily and missing important meetings. It's only a matter of time before Dad notices something's wrong with the company accounts. I don't know what to do with all this information. Mike's actions are unforgivable. He tried to make me homeless out of pure greed and spite. But he's still my brother, and knowing he's about to lose everything doesn't make me feel any better. If I tell Dad about the loans and embezzlement, it will destroy any chance of our family ever healing from this. But can I really keep quiet while Mike steals from our father to cover his gambling debts? I never thought my brother's jealousy over an inheritance would uncover something this dark. Money really does destroy families. I'll update again when I decide what to do about telling Dad. Update 2. It's been 2 months since my last update, and everything has completely fallen apart in ways I never imagined possible. I had to tell Dad about Mike's loans because things got really dangerous. 3 weeks ago, Sarah finally filed for divorce and moved in with her sister, taking the kids with her. She waited until Mike was at work, packed their essential belongings, and left. She had already transferred most of their accessible money to new accounts. When Mike came home to an empty house and divorce papers, he completely lost it. He showed up at Grandma's house at 2 a.m., completely drunk and out of control. He was screaming in the front yard about how I'd ruined his life, destroyed his marriage, and turned everyone against him. My neighbors called to warn me he was out there with a gas can, threatening to burn down the house. He kept yelling about how if he couldn't have Grandma's house, no one should. I called the police and locked myself in the upstairs bathroom. I could hear him breaking windows downstairs. By the time the police arrived, he'd already poured gasoline on the front porch. They arrested him before he could light anything on fire. The next morning, I filed for a restraining order. When Dad asked why Mike would try to burn down the house, I had to tell him everything: the crypto losses, the hidden loans, the embezzlement from the company. Sarah sent over all the documentation she'd collected. Dad spent hours going through everything, getting paler by the minute as he realized how much money Mike had stolen. Dad had to bring in forensic accountants to review everything. They discovered Mike had taken over $300,000 from the company, way more than Sarah originally found. He'd been falsifying invoices, creating fake vendor payments, and moving money between accounts to hide the theft. Dad had to contact all their major clients and the bank to deal with the fallout. Mike got fired immediately. Dad had to restructure huge parts of the company to cover the missing money. He mortgaged several properties and had to lay off some long-time employees. The business will survive, but it's been badly damaged. Some clients pulled their contracts after news got out. Janet finally showed her true colors through all this. Instead of being horrified by what Mike did, she blamed me for exposing him. She said I should give Mike half of Grandma's inheritance to help him pay back the money and keep him out of jail. When Dad refused to support her crazy demand, she moved out. They're separating now too. After making bail, Mike disappeared for a few weeks. Nobody knew where he went. Then last week, he tried accessing the company accounts again from a hotel computer. When that failed, he emptied what was left in his and Sarah's joint accounts, her backup savings she hadn't been able to transfer, and bought a plane ticket to Mexico. Thankfully, Sarah had put a fraud alert on their accounts. The bank notified her, and she contacted the police. They caught him at the airport with fake travel documents and nearly $50,000 in cash. Sarah pressed charges for financial fraud and violating the restraining order. The DA is also looking at charges for attempted arson and embezzlement. The police investigation revealed more about Mike's scheme with my old building manager. He'd paid the guy nearly $15,000 in bribes to fabricate lease violations and force me out. The manager confessed everything, hoping for leniency. He provided copies of texts showing Mike had planned to follow me to any new apartment and do the same thing again. Dad is trying to hold everything together, but I can tell he's really struggling. He apologized again for not seeing what Mike had become. I don't blame him. Mike fooled everyone. Dad had to postpone his retirement and will probably have to work several more years to rebuild the company's finances. The family is still divided, but now it's worse. Janet's family is spreading rumors that I somehow tricked Mike into stealing money and manipulated Sarah into leaving him. Mom's family has completely cut contact with that side. Holiday gatherings are probably ruined forever. Mike's facing serious prison time between the fraud, embezzlement, and attempted arson charges. His lawyer is trying to negotiate a plea deal, but the DA isn't being lenient given how much money was involved. Sarah's divorce is moving forward and she's seeking full custody, which seems likely given everything that's happened. I'm still living in Grandma's house. The attempted arson damaged the porch and some windows, but it's mostly repaired now. Every time I look at the scorch marks that wouldn't come off, I wonder how my own brother could hate me enough to try burning down our childhood memories. Money and greed really can poison people's souls. Dad comes over more often now. We're slowly rebuilding our relationship without Mike and Janet's toxic influence. But sometimes I catch him staring at those old family photos on the wall, and I know he's wondering where he went wrong with Mike. I wish I had an answer for him. Update 3. A year has passed since the original events, and I wanted to give a final update on how everything turned out. A lot has changed in our family, and some wounds may never fully heal. Mike took a plea deal 6 months ago. He's serving 18 months in a minimum security prison for fraud, embezzlement, and attempted arson. The DA pushed for a longer sentence, but his lawyer argued that his crypto addiction was like gambling addiction and he needed treatment more than punishment. He could have faced up to 5 years, so I guess he got lucky. Sarah's divorce was finalized 3 months ago. She got full custody of their kids, with Mike only allowed supervised visits after his release. She found out she was pregnant right after leaving him, which made everything more complicated. The baby was born last month, and Mike wasn't allowed to be there. She's moved to another state to be closer to her family and start fresh. Dad's business survived but took a massive hit. He had to sell 40% of the company to an investor to cover Mike's debts and keep things running. He's working longer hours than ever at 65, trying to rebuild what Mike destroyed. The investor wants him to stay on for at least 3 more years before retirement. Sometimes I catch him looking so tired and defeated, it breaks my heart. Janet tried contesting their prenup during divorce proceedings, claiming Dad had hidden assets. She lost badly when her own emails about Mike's theft were presented in court. She moved back to her hometown in Florida, but still tries stirring up drama through social media. She posts cryptic messages about betrayal and how money destroys families, obviously aimed at me. I renovated Grandma's house and decided to make it my permanent home. During renovations, I found her old diaries in a wall space we were opening up. She had written extensively about her concerns regarding Mike's materialism and entitlement. She noticed how obsessed he'd become with money and status, even before the crypto gambling started. The most revealing entry was from 3 months before she died. She wrote about her decision to leave me the house, saying she knew Mike would only see it as a financial asset to leverage. She believed I'd appreciate it for the memories and family history it held. Reading her words made me feel closer to her than ever. She saw what was happening with Mike before any of us did. Dad comes over for dinner twice a week now. We're closer than we've been since Mom died. He's finally started seeing someone, not dating, but a grief counselor to deal with everything. Losing Mike to prison and greed feels like another death in the family. Mike sends letters sometimes from prison. I haven't opened any of them. They sit in a box in my closet. Maybe someday I'll want to know what he has to say, but right now the wounds are still too fresh. Dad reads his letters and says Mike claims he's changed, that prison has helped him realize what he lost. I'm not ready to believe that yet. The family remains fractured. Holiday gatherings are smaller now, just Dad, me, and Mom's side of the family. Dad's siblings still think I should have helped Mike avoid prison by giving him the inheritance. They send birthday cards to Mike but ignore mine. That hurts sometimes, but I'm learning to accept that some relationships can't be saved. I've started digitizing old family videos we found in Grandma's attic. Watching young Mike teach me to ride a bike or help with homework feels like watching a stranger. I don't recognize that caring big brother in the man who tried to destroy my life over money. Maybe that's the hardest part of all this, mourning the brother I had while he's still alive but forever changed. Life goes on. I'm dating someone new who never knew the old family dynamic. It's refreshing to build relationships without all that history. But some nights, when I'm alone in this big house, I still wonder if there was anything I could have done differently to prevent my brother's downfall. Those thoughts probably won't ever go away completely. For now, I'm focusing on building my life and being there for Dad. Some bridges stay burned, and that has to be okay.